This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So yesterday we talked about how there's 4 steps to a solid email strategy. First step is getting to the inbox, mostly technical. I'm happy to say we're starting to move past that now. Phew! And we're going to move into step 2, which is how are we going to stay in the inbox consistently? Does that mean 100% of your email is going to get into the inbox? No. That's just not how email works. Just like 100% of the Facebook ads you try to push out don't get in front of your ideal target audience. Dang it. All those Facebook posts you write, 100% of the people in your group or on your profile, they don't see them. I wish they did. You can get pretty close though, a lot darn better than Facebook will get you, I'll tell you that. You can be in front of a lot more people with email than you can with Facebook. And it doesn't cost you near as much. Staying there is what we're going to start working on now. And that's mostly going to start to move into behavioral. Remember, this was like technical. This is more moving into behavioral, the 90%. How do we gauge how that's going? And the easiest way to look at it is, what is our reputation? Our domain reputation primarily. We're going to start to look at reputation because that truly is how the game is won or lost. A lot of people will say, oh, well, my reputation is bad, so that's why all my stuff's going to spam. Not quite. That's the result of all the behavioral insults that led to the reputation being bad, which is now also contributing to your email going to spam. But it's not because your reputation is bad that you're going to spam. It's what happened that caused that problem in the first place? Like, what were the root causes of the reputation going down? So congratulations, you've addressed the tools, the domain strategy, the DNS records. I know there's a few things still written down as questions. There's a couple of things we need to cover to make sure you get all that shored up. But we've gotten through the heavy lifting of setting that solid foundation. And it's time now for a checkup. Y'all know I'm a nurse. I can't help myself. My job is to take care of you. You're all my patients. This is what we're doing. So it's time to see how your reputation is looking. There's domain reputation and there's IP reputation. So sending domains, the back end, remember, they get a reputation. And those servers that are doing all the sending, those also get a reputation. And Google, good old daddy Google, they will show you what they are rating your domains or your IPs. They'll show that to you. Now, Yahoo and Outlook also have ratings. Outlook will show it to you, but I'll just tell you right now, the 11 or 12-step process it takes to be able to see what they have to say is agonizing. And then when you get in there and it's like red, yellow, green, you wonder why you worked so hard. Because who cares? There's not enough Outlook people on your list, most likely, for this to be a thing. Pay attention to Google. They own the majority of the market share. Whatever Google says is probably going to be similar to what the others are going to say too. A simple DNS record. And look at you guys, you've graduated the DNS lesson already. A simple DNS record is all that's needed to see what your domain reputation is. I'm going to walk you through the steps. And for those of you that are here live, because I know this is being recorded, I'm going to walk through the steps. And then at the end of the lesson, we'll stop and we'll actually do them. So the first thing is we got to go to postmaster.google.com. That's where Daddy Google is going to have their opinion. Enter your root domain, whatever the root domain is, and then enter the text record that Google gives you. It's simple. Now I'm going to give you an order of operations on this. I'm not expecting you to do it while we're talking live, but we'll come back to it. The order is you always put your root domain in first. If you're using a subdomain, we don't do that one first. That's the one I really want to look at the most, but that's not the one we do first. We got to do the root domain first. Put in the TXT record Google gives you. Go back into Google Postmaster and validate it. Just click the button. And then after that validation comes through, if you have a subdomain, then go add the subdomain into Postmaster and you will not have to put in another TXT record because the one you put in for the root domain will carry through for all of the subdomains you want to put in. That's why we put in the root domain first. So here's some screenshots just so you can kind of get an idea of what you're about ready to dive into. This is just a little pop-up that'll show up on the screen when you say you want to put in your domain. And the first step is just to put it in, like example.com, whatever the domain is. And then you hit next. And the second step is it's going to say, hey, go verify you actually own that puppy, because we're not going to share this information with you unless you can prove that that's your domain. That's why we can't go look and see what ActiveCampaign domains reputations are. Dang it. It's going to spit out this TXT record. Remember I told you there's a record type, it's TXT. There's a host name, which is going to be the @ symbol or your root domain, always for this, because you're putting the root domain. And then they give you what's in the gray box. And if you just go to that gray box and instead of trying to like drag your mouse, just go click, 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 3 clicks in a row really fast, it'll highlight the whole thing with no extra spaces or leaving a character off or anything like that. And then you just go put that record in your DNS. Go over to your DNS, wherever it's managed, whether it's Google Domains or it's Cloudflare or Hover, whatever, put in the record. And then once you put in the record, come back in here and hit this little verify button. If for some reason there's a squirrel and you go off and do something else and have to come back and figure out how to verify it, you won't see this pop up anymore, but you'll see the domain example.com not verified. And over on the right-hand side, if you hover over the domain, 3 dots will appear. You can click it, and one of the options is verify domain. So you can still get back in there even if you have to leave and come back later. It's a TXT record. The host is probably going to be the @ symbol or your root domain if it doesn't accept the @ symbol. And the value is whatever's in that gray box. And then this is what you're going to see. The first thing it's going to show you is the spam rate. So when you go in there and you click on the domain you just added, and this is mine, actually, this is reply.emailtoinbox.com. When you click on the domain, it's going to first show you the spam rate. There's a drop down right here. This is the spam rate for my domain during this period of time. If you hover over this little question mark, and I'm just going to read this to you, it says the dashboard shows the volume of user-reported spam versus the email that was sent to the inbox. Only emails authenticated by DKIM are eligible for spam rate calculation. Did you catch that? Only emails authenticated by DKIM, meaning you must have a DKIM record, are eligible for spam rate calculation. So there's a lot of people, probably many of you, who don't have DKIM records. So if you don't have a DKIM record, yours might just say no data. And then you can switch this little drop down to domain reputation. There's a lot of options in here, but domain reputation and spam rate are the two we're going to focus on mostly. It's going to default to spam rate, and then you change it to domain reputation, and then you can see what's the domain reputation. And this is my domain, so it better friggin' be high, right? So high, left to right, during that period of time, you can see what your domain reputation is in here. And that's what we want. We want a nice high domain reputation. Medium is okay once in a while, but remember we covered no one's here because we wake up in the morning excited to be average. We don't want to be average. We don't want to be medium. Who wants that? Plus, if you're at medium, where are you going? There's no cushion. If something happens, there's no cushion. You're going to low after that. If you're on low, a lot of your email is going to spam. If you're on bad, pretty much all your email is going to spam. And remember, this is not the reason that this bad thing is happening to you. It is the result. This is an IP reputation. This is my IP. I have a dedicated IP. There's colors over there for bad, low, medium, and high. So the green obviously is a good thing. They don't give you ratings every day. If you're on a shared server, you don't have your own dedicated server, then you may not see anything in here. You might see some yellows or even some reds because you're on some shared server and there's a bunch of other people using it. And what do we know about other people? They don't all do stuff well. So if you're on shared servers, you may have shared server reputation that shows up in here that's red. If you're using a subdomain as your sending domain, this is the one you want to monitor. And that's why you'll see up here, I have this set to reply.emailtoinbox.com when I'm showing you this. I'm not showing you my root domain. My root domain doesn't actually have any data on it. It's a beautiful thing. I love that my root domain has no data on it because I would not want to risk my root domain reputation for marketing. That's why we use subdomains for all of this to take the load off the root domain and make sure that if something goes wrong, we're affecting the sub. I can deal with that. I affect email to inbox.com. That's not a good day. If you're using a subdomain, you're going to put in the root first, put in the record and verify it. Then you're going to put in the subdomain. And then when you go and look, forget the root domain. Just look at the sub. That's the one you're using as the sender. That is the sender. Your root domain is just a friendly from. It may have a reputation. If it does, I can almost guarantee you it's different. That reputation for your root domain will most likely be different than the one that you're seeing on the subdomain. It does carry over a little, especially if you're doing a lot of stuff out of your Google account or you have your root domain connected to something else, you know, like Help Scout or some ticketing system or something like that. So you can get reputations on the root, but you're going to be far better off if you run your marketing off of a subdomain so that it takes the brunt of any risk away from the root domain. The sending subdomain actually protects your root domain from harm. And if you, by the way, if you look in your own email accounts, if you just go through like your normal email account and start looking at the emails that people are sending you, PayPal or Apple or, you know, Hewlett Packard or whatever, you know, Stripe, whoever you're getting emails from, those emails are going to all come from name@stripe.com or theirdomain.com. But if you had the occasion to see the back end, what you would see is that they're all using subdomains on the back. Any decent sized company who knows anything about email knows they don't do that kind of stuff from their root domain. Maybe transactional, but anything related to marketing that might be somewhat risky, we do that on subs because it takes the brunt of any damage. All right, so how Google data works. Google will plot a dot on the graph for any day where your send volume is around 200 or more. They don't tell us the exact number. It used to be 50. They used to say if there's 50 or more in any day, they'll give you a dot on the graph. So if you have 50 people on your list and you send them each, like you send them an email, that's 50. If you're sending about 200, they don't tell us the number. They say a few hundred. But I can tell you I've seen a dot plotted on the graph for as little as 186 emails that were sent. So it's somewhere around there. But if you're not sending that much email on any given day, you're just not going to see a dot. So if you're not sending that kind of email at all, like maybe you only send 50 or 100 emails pretty much, like that's your max on any day, well, then you're going to go in and you're going to actually see no data. It won't be a graph with dots on it. It'll just say no data. So lower send volumes are just going to show that. And also the other thing to keep in mind is that although we love to see Google's opinion on this because it's very validating when you're starting to get into this and you're like, oh, thank God, this is working. Or, oh no, that did not work. At least I know. The problem is they wait 2 to 4 days to tell us about it. There's a lag. And so let's say you start warming up this domain we're going to start working on. We send out 100 emails today. We send out 200 tomorrow. Oop, that one got Google's attention. The 100 didn't. The 100 flew under the radar. The 200 is going to get their attention, but you may not see what they rated you for that 200 send that you're going to do maybe tomorrow until day 3 or maybe day 4 or God forbid day 5. So you just have to keep going and looking at all your other stats while you're waiting for Google to produce their data for you to look at. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's normal. This is what it looks like if there's no data. So if you don't have your DKIM record or you don't have enough send volume, it'll just say no data to display at this time. Please come back later. It actually says Postmaster Tools requires that your domain satisfies certain conditions. Before data is visible for this chart, refer to the help page for more details. So if you want, you can nerd out and do that tonight, but it'll basically tell you what I'm telling you. So the recommended KPIs for the data that we're looking at in Google is the domain and IP reputation. We want it to be high, flat out. We're here for that reason. We want our reputation to be high for both the domain and the IP that we're using. Medium is okay on occasion. It happens. I did something with a client a couple of days ago and their reputation's been high. And actually they did something, I should say, not me. They did something and I had a feeling that it was going to be a problem and it dropped it down to medium. And that's okay. We'll get it back up. It just actually gives me something to talk with them about. Like, hey, you know that thing that happened a couple, 3 days ago? Let's maybe do that different next time because that one didn't go so well for Daddy Google. And you want your spam rate in Google to be well under 1%. This is a different number than what I'm telling you that you're going to want your complaint rate to be. Complaint rate, different than spam rate. I know it sounds ridiculous. Complaint rate is the one that we're seeing in whatever tool we're using. Remember, Google doesn't share when people mark your email as spam or junk. They don't share that with all the tools, so you never see that factored into the stats. Google gives you something called a spam rate, and they own the majority of the market share, so the numbers over here are different. So your next steps are to look and see what your domain reputation is. Go into Google Postmaster, put your root domain in there first. If you have a subdomain, what is the reputation of that? And then what's your spam rate? Bad? Oh, shoot, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm gonna leave this up. I'm gonna walk around.